I didn't know that I was an energetic being. And I worked in healthcare for 32 years coding charts. And what that meant, Bridget, is that I read charts from cover to cover. I worked in all of the major hospitals here in Calgary. And I didn't know, as an empathic being, as somebody who absorbed a lot of energy, as I read those words, I got caught up in their stories. I could feel the pain. I could feel the loss. I could feel the horror in some cases. And is it any wonder that I manifested diabetes, migraines, and cancer?
Welcome to the Women Talk podcast, where ordinary women share their extraordinary stories. We would love for you to share your story on our podcast. Go to www.womentalk.ca and apply to share your story. And now let's welcome your host, founder, and CEO of Women Talk, Bridget Lessard-Diel.
Welcome back to the Women Talk podcast. I am so happy you're joining me today because my guest is Giuliana Melo. Giuliana worked in the healthcare system for 32 years, coding charts, absorbing all the aches and pain of the people she was reading about. It's no wonder that in 2011 she was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. But that sent her on a spiritual journey that led her to accept her superpowers. Her story matters.
In 2011, I was diagnosed with stage 3 peritoneal cancer. The peritoneum is the outer lining of all of your organs, and it had grown to the uterus, the tubes, the cervix, the ovaries, and the appendix. So I had 2 major surgeries and chemo, 6 chemos. And after that, after I got through the survival mode, I recognized something needed to heal in my life. Something needed to change. I had to take chances, and I needed to make some new choices. So I asked God and my angels to help me. I tapped into my intuition to guide me to people, places, and events, and courses to help me. I found the late, great Louise Hay, who is the queen of the Affirmation, and I learned from her that cancer is deep resentment held in the body. I needed to heal, and her philosophy really resonated with me. Some of the points of her philosophy are: we are each responsible for our experiences. Every thought we think is creating our future. The point of power is always in this present moment. Everyone suffers from self-hatred and guilt. The bottom line for each of us is I'm not good enough. And as even Oprah teaches us, we all at our core want to know that we're valued, that what we say is important, and that we're being heard. What I really learned was that, when we think, that thoughts are really just things that we can change. This one's really interesting. I learned that we create every so-called illness in our body through emotions being behind every dis-ease. Resentment, criticism, and guilt are the most damaging patterns we do to ourselves. Releasing resentment can dissolve even cancer. We must release the past and forgive everyone and start with ourselves. We must be willing to begin to learn to love ourselves. This one was one of the catalysts that truly have helped me save my own life. Self-approval and self-acceptance in the now are the keys to positive changes. So really sitting with, who am I in this moment? Even though I'm a particular size, I love and appreciate myself. When we really love ourselves, everything in our life works. And for me, I had a lot of love. I recognized from a little girl that I had a big heart. And I didn't recognize at that time that I had given and given and given until I was empty. I don't resent that because who I was then has created who I am now. However, that saying, like Maya Angelou says, when you know better, you do better. And so now each day I do endeavor to do better. Doesn't mean that each day is perfect, but I strive to learn through my mistakes without judging myself so harshly as I once did. And Maya Angelou has been an amazing teacher with Oprah Winfrey. And Oprah brought me this amazing teacher called Diane LaVanzant. And she says, until you heal the wounds of the past, you're going to bleed. You can bandage the bleeding with food, with alcohol, with drugs, with work, with cigarettes, with sex, but eventually it will all ooze through and stain your life. You must find the strength to open the wounds, stick your hands inside, pull out the core of the pain that is holding you in your past, the memories, and make peace with them. We do this because we deserve it. It's been interesting as I've learned to forgive. Forgiveness and letting go, it seems like 3 easy words: forgive and let go. Yet it's been so painful recognizing that there was a lot of deep pain within the physical body, recognizing that we are energy. Who knows that we were energy? I certainly didn't. But now that I recognize that we are, I know that I'm the master of my sail and my ship, and that I have the power within me to make changes and to love myself right now as I am. I hope that you can learn to love yourself as well.
In 1996, futurist Rolf Jensen predicted that the highest paid person in this century would be the storyteller, regardless of occupation. Well, he was right. One of the best ways to grow your business is by sharing your story. And the best and safest place to share your story is at Women Talk. Become a Women Talk member today and change not only your life, but the lives of the women around you. Go to www.womentalk.ca/membership for more information. Cancer. It affects so many people, doesn't it?
It sure does.
So if you were to look at the Giuliana that's sitting in a doctor's office that just got diagnosed with cancer, what would you say to her now?
I would say to her that she had done the best that she knew how at the time. I would grab her and hug her and tell her I loved her, because I never believed it. It's an interesting dynamic to recognize how, I was just, as I was preparing this morning, I thought, I didn't know that I was an energetic being. And I worked in healthcare for 32 years coding charts. And what that meant, Bridget, is that I read charts from cover to cover. I worked in all of the major hospitals here in Calgary. And I didn't know, as an empathic being, as somebody who absorbed a lot of energy, as I read those words, I got caught up in their stories. I could feel the pain. I could feel the loss. I could feel the horror in some cases. And I didn't recognize that I was carrying it all and that I didn't know how to release it. And is it any wonder that I manifested diabetes, migraines, and cancer? And so now that I know this, I know it's really important to do techniques like grounding and clearing my energy and maintaining my energy, and mostly letting myself off the hook for being who I was back then.
Why didn't you love yourself?
I think that when I got into mentoring, I had to really dig deep, like Giuliana said, and I had to recognize my 5 fears. I never felt enough. I never felt worthy. I remember that my mom telling me the story of how when I was born, I was only 5 pounds. And so from the moment that I was born, they fattened me up. And as a young girl, I was always overweight. And so then I would be on diets and I would get weighed, and I learned very early that my value was dependent on my weight. And whether it was real or perceived, that was what I thought. And then as I got older I would meet guys and they would say, "Oh, you're so beautiful. Too bad you're so fat."
Good
And
gracious,
it's
eh?
traumatized me. And even to today, I have an amazing husband. He's like, I can't remember what that movie's called, where he just sees his wife as this ravishing beauty. And, she's just an ordinary girl. That's how my husband's been. So it's been God gifted me, even though our marriage hasn't been perfect. I don't want to say that, but we've learned and grown together. But it's been all of the conditioning in childhood, all of that, being called names. And I was so sensitive. That's what I recognize now. I am so sensitive. And it's part of what makes me who I am. I think, at one time I used to think that it was almost a negative, whereas now it's one of my superpowers. I like to think I'm an empathic badass.
Oh, you know what? I just love this because this is becoming part of my talking now and my teaching people is that these things that we're ashamed of, that we hide, most of the times they are our superpowers.
Exactly.
We just don't know it.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I sit with now. It's like, even though I was weak, I felt judged, I didn't feel worthy, I love and appreciate myself. And I did start doing affirmations early in 2013. I went to I Can Do It Vancouver, and I just allowed my spirit to guide me to all of these teachers and events and classes. And I've always had a thirst for knowledge and making myself better. My mother has modeled that for me my whole life. She went through her own stuff when I was young, and I saw how she had that self-development. And so I knew it's an interesting dynamic because my mother has always, she's the queen of forgiveness and faith and trust and, making yourself better and walking through your life with more grace. However, it was inside of me. It was how I internalized things people said to me, or even my own thoughts that weren't true.
Yeah. And, I think, so you've come to discover that you're an angel intuitive.
I am.
And so that is like so far apart from being a computer data entering girl.
It is.
So,
way together, yeah.
So
Another realm.
No kidding. So on your journey to getting there, because I think that was probably your little secret at first. Like actually, I shouldn't say they probably, but did people look at you and say, "What are you talking about?"
Oh, absolutely. I remember, I've always had the gift of intuition. I just knew things, but I didn't know how I knew them. And so as I looked to the divine for help to heal my life, and I recognized that there was this little voice that was guiding me. And it's interesting because even about a year ago, my mom said to me, "How did you know? How did you know what to do?" And I found that so interesting because if you really look at it, each of us have that voice within us. A lot of times we're not trusting it because we don't know, where's this voice coming from? Are we crazy? And I just seeked out teachers to help me because the voice of intuition is like a language. Yeah. And each of us has it, but it's like learning Italian. If we choose to learn Italian, we'll become proficient in Italian. And that's exactly what I did. I learned I'm a feeler, and I got a teacher. I'm with her today who helps me develop my intuition. And I learned to trust, and I learned to connect with a specific realm, the guardian angels and archangels. And then I began to trust.
But did you find, would you sometimes think, oh my God, I think I'm losing it? Because it's so far away from what you were and the Catholic religion.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a completely different world that often people on the other side look and think that you're a little cuckoo.
Oh, they did. And I remember when I ended up leaving my job in 2016 because to pursue my love of all things divine, I recognized that I had been given another chance at life and that I just needed to leave my 9-to-5. And I remember people saying to me, "What do you do?" And for about at least a year and a half, I would say, when people would say to me, "What do you do?" I would say, "Oh, I used to work for AHS." I wouldn't say, oh, I'm an angel intuitive, because a lot of us, it's like coming out of the closet, the spiritual closet.
Now you're talking my language.
I knew you would love that one. But it's true. It's like,
it really
it's like
is.
being who you are and proclaiming, you know what? Yeah, I talk to angels. Yeah, I can feel my deceased loved ones with me. Yeah, I believe in this power that is guiding me, and that I know that I can tap into it to help others as well as myself. And the more that I've tested it, the more that it's shown me the amazingness of it. And each of us has that ability. And that's been my mission. To my mantra, if I had to state a mission statement, is that I want to help open up your connection with your divine team of helpers, because each of us, regardless of any religious upbringing, have been gifted these angels to help us.
Yeah,
And
I think it's just a lot of us don't know how to communicate.
Well, that's exactly it. And so it's my joy to help people connect with their angels and recognize that, you know what, on these days, I think that a great act of self-care is recognizing that you have this team, is learning how to connect with them, is asking in a way that feels good for you, and is testing them. It's like saying, okay, I remember in the early days, Bridget, I'm going to make you laugh. I would say to the angels, okay, you know what, angels? If you're really with me, I want a parking spot outside of wherever, Walmart, or, in a big parking lot. And I would manifest it. And now I ask them to help me with everything. We don't always get what we ask for, because we have a saying in the spiritual world that it's always for our highest, greatest good. And quite often what we ask for doesn't come in the pretty little package that we expect. However, we are always helped.
Yeah, I like this saying, this quote, some of God's greatest work is unanswered prayers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true. Now, I want to touch quickly on something that you said, because it's very controversial, is that often we can create our own illness.
So I believe I've had some great spiritual teachers. Now, this is not something that I know for sure. It's a philosophy. It is the idea that every illness is caused from an emotion behind it. So, for example, I have this book that's called The Secret Language of Your Body by Ina Segal. And so, for example, I'm going to look up, let's say I have a pain in my breasts. So it could be a lack of nurturing, gentle love for yourself, believing that you don't deserve to receive from others or be supported. And so when I read that, it's like, okay, if it's my right breast, it says never still, always busy doing things, propensity to become a workaholic, difficulty saying no, thinking that if you don't do something, the world might end. So what this book offers is, okay, I'm going to look at this, I'm going to read it. Does anything resonate? And what can I do to move this energy out? So I touched on the fact that I've learned that we're energetic beings. Like, yes, we have a body, but we're energy, we're frequency, we're vibration. And so every dis-ease means that we've absorbed some energy from somewhere and we haven't moved it out. So, for example, last week in mentoring, I said to my mentor, I'm having a lot of body pain and I don't know how to move it. And she said to me, why do you feel like you need to punish yourself? Now, we had talked at the beginning before we came on about how I'm walking through some growth with my son. And I had been internalizing some of his choices, thinking that it was somehow my fault. And she let me off the hook and she said, he is not a reflection of you. What he does is his own choice. Each of us have a choice. And in that moment, Bridget, I honestly felt pain releasing from my body. Did all the pain release? Absolutely not. However, my work then, I knew that for that week, I needed to move my energy. And right now we're doing Move My Body 30. And so each day I do at least a minimum of 30 minutes of movement to move the energy out. And so what this book offers is, okay, if my hands are hurting, what does that mean? For me...
And what is that book?
It's called The Secret Language of Your Body by Ina Segal. And it's so amazing...
I want to pick from your experience a little bit. So let's say some of our listeners are brand new to all of this, and there's a diagnosis or something is going on, and you know nothing about the spiritual world. Where do you start?
Okay, so what I would do, absolutely, we always suggest you go to the doctors. You get a diagnosis, you get tested,
Yeah.
and then you start there. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, so for example, if I might have incontinence, so I listen to the doctor, I do my Kegels, and then I consult the book and I say, all right, she offers incontinence is a sense of being out of control, emotional buildup that needs releasing, feeling anxious, timid, overwhelmed, doubting yourself, nagging guilt, stress from holding on to negativity, and struggle. So then as a woman of a certain age that might have, some incontinence after cancer, I'm like, okay, am I feeling out of control? Is there a nugget of truth in this? Am I feeling anxious, timid, overwhelmed? Am I saying no or am I saying yes when I should be saying no? Is there something that I can do, something that I can control within reading this? And for me, the help has come from, reading this and saying, some of this is true. And even now, my husband, when anything goes wrong with any of his friends, he always says, Julie, check the book. What's going on? Because there is always a nugget of truth. And so, I'm not naive. We don't say everything like this is absolutely something to consult to say. If I have a cold sore, am I angry? Is something going on in my world that I need to rein in control? Am I feeling helpless? How can I feel more in power of myself? Yeah. And so it's a resource like anything to garner some control in your life and to say, okay, this is where my emotional work is. For me, I'm in mentoring like every week. And it's helped me stay connected. It's afforded me a community. Like Women Talk is amazing. And we have this saying, community builds your immunity. And, recognize
it really does.
Right? It really, really does. And it's been such an amazing gift.
And what you and all the spiritual and angel guided, intuitive, like my world is changing so much because I came from a hockey world too.
Right.
And I'm so intrigued by all of it. I'm so getting it. It's amazing.
But in the hockey world, dear Bridget, right? You relied on your impulses and intuition of a different kind, right?
Yeah, but it was more kind of like in the masculine energy.
Yeah, more masculine, where this is what I've recognized, that we have that masculine and feminine within each of us, and that our right side is our giving, it's the color gold, and our left side is our feminine side, is our receiving side. And so very interesting when you can look at it that way and just say, I wonder. Doesn't mean that we need to subscribe to all of it. However, if it resonates with you, then it could be part of your truth as well. And that's what I like to offer. I'm not one of these that, you got to believe my way or the highway. No, I like to believe that everything can work for us, and we can seek to wonder, that's interesting. I wonder if maybe because I have this cold, maybe I am, walking through some anger. Maybe when, my chest is hurting, maybe there is some grief that I need to let go of. These are the kinds of things that once if you purchase this book, or even with Louise Hay's, You Can Heal Your Life, she has the emotions behind diseases and
it's
the reference in her
now
skin.
And of course people can reach out to you for some help, because you're a fabulous lady, and I adore you, and I think that you could help a lot of people. So if people want to get a hold of you, where do they go?
So you can contact me on my contact form on my website. That's the easiest, www.giulianamelo.com.
Wonderful. And you're also on social media?
I am on Facebook, Heal with Giuliana Melo.
Wonderful. Thank you, Giuliana. You are just fabulous. Such an easy interview. I love it.
Thank you.
desire to share your story with our audience, apply to be on our podcast. To apply and find a full list of our podcasts, go to www.womentalk.ca.